Hey guys, what's up? It's Eric with Advanced Level Automotive. Welcome back to the channel. So today we got called out to take a look at this 2008 Ford F250. This is not a diesel, this is a gas engine, 5.4 liter V8. And this truck has been to a couple of different shops. They've already replaced the throttle body, they replaced the accelerator pedal position sensor, they replaced the fuel pump. Some other items have been replaced. I'm not exactly sure of everything that's been replaced, but I can tell you right now, the truck still has a lot of problems. The main complaint is that the truck goes into like a default mode or a limp home mode. So when they're driving it, the accelerator becomes useless. You can mash the pedal all the way to the floor and the truck won't get up and go. So it goes into a fault mode, and also sometimes it stalls. So let me take you guys inside. We're gonna hook up the scan tool. We're gonna see what we got. Okay guys, so before we go ahead and hook up the scan tool, I do wanna show you that the truck does start and run. Well, it did. Let me shut the key back off, turn it back on. Okay, so the truck stalled earlier. You can see it just stalled again, but earlier it was running for a couple of minutes and then it stalled out by itself. And then I had to cycle the key off and then back on to get it to start up again. Let me see if it'll start up. Cycle the key. See if we can keep this thing running for a moment. Well, now it doesn't stay running anymore. Earlier it was running. Okay, so as you can see, we are running. The engine actually sounds pretty good. So initially, I don't have any concerns with the way the engine runs. There's no misfires. There's no mechanical noise or anything like that. You can see the engine just stalled. So let's go inside and take a look at what fault codes we have. Okay guys, so the scan tool that we're using today is a Think Tool Pro. We're gonna go into the Ford menu here. Hit OK. We're gonna go ahead and hit automatic search. This is going to automatically detect the VIN number and show us our vehicle make and model. As you can see, we have this 2008 Ford Series Super Duty 5.4 liter V8 3-valve engine. It is gasoline. We're gonna go ahead and hit yes. Okay, so next up we're gonna go ahead and hit system selection. We're going to locate the PCM right here, powertrain control module. And the first thing we want to do here is we're going to go ahead and read fault codes, retrieve continuous memory data trouble codes. Okay, so we are in the DTC menu. And as you can see, we have quite a few different trouble codes here. Starting up here at the top, we have a heater circuit error. Looks like bank 1 sensor 1, heater circuit error for, bank 2 sensor 1, a heater circuit error for bank 2 sensor 2. Knock sensor circuit fault, knock sensor number 1, knock sensor circuit fault number 2. Looks like we have a P0420 for the catalytic converter. Man, we have a P0600. What is this? Serial communication link error. Okay, and then this gives you a little bit of information about the DTC or possible reasons. It says here we could have a blown fuse. It also says here we have an open circuit between the PCM and the TCM. Open power or ground at connector, connector damaged. TCM, PCM could be damaged. Let's scroll down. The next code, P0600A, internal control module monitoring processor performance. That doesn't sound good either. P060B, internal control module, AD processing performance. That doesn't sound good. P2004, intake manifold runner control stuck open. P2104, throttle actuator control forced idle. So I guess that makes sense because like I said, this thing was going into limp mode. P2105, throttle actuator control system forced engine shutdown, which I believe is what was happening earlier when the engine would shut off by itself. P2107, throttle actuator control module processor. Man, P2110, throttle actuator control force speed limit. Again, that's I believe for the limp home mode. P2111, throttle actuator control stuck open. P2112, throttle actuator control stuck closed. P2122, throttle position sensor switch D circuit low input. P2126, throttle pedal position sensor switch E circuit range performance error. That's for the pedal position sensor. P2131, pedal position sensor switch F circuit range performance error. We have this UO300 internal control module software incompatible. That's interesting. And then finally, we have this P0325 knock sensor #1 circuit fault. And those are all the trouble codes that we have. Wow. Okay, guys, so this one's going to be pretty interesting. We have a lot of trouble codes, more than I was really anticipating. But, you know, I can see why taking this vehicle to a parts changer could result in you having to replace a lot of different parts, because we have a lot of codes for a lot of separate systems. Again, we have codes for heater circuit, we have codes for knock sensor circuit, we have codes for intake manifold runner control, we have codes for serial communication. What else do we have? We have codes for the throttle actuator, pedal position sensor. Yeah, so this, you know, would be a parts changer's nightmare. And I can see why the owner of this truck is so frustrated, because he's put a lot of money into it and it's still doing the same thing. So what I want to share with you guys today is my thought process or my method of dealing with vehicles like this. You know, whenever I run into a vehicle that I scan and it just has so many different codes, you know, for so many different systems, what I like to do is not get overwhelmed. I like to try to keep things simple. And what I like to do also is start by trying to figure out if any of these codes are related to each other. It's possible that all of these sensors or components share some type of main ground or main power feed, and that's why all of these codes get set at one time. So in all actuality, you know, it may not even be that difficult to diagnose if we take a moment to maybe look over the wiring diagram and figure out how the system is tied together and what could be shared between all of these components, whether it's a power feed or a ground or some type of communication line. That's really going to help us tremendously in trying to figure out what's wrong with the vehicle. So I think what we could do next is go ahead and pull up a wiring diagram and go over the system. But I think before we start doing that, I do want to take a moment to do a quick visual check, because the nice thing about this engine bay is that there's a lot of room, so we can see a lot of the grounds, body grounds and engine grounds. And just doing a quick visual check can really save you a lot of time if we find that maybe there's a loose ground or something like that. Same thing goes with checking fuses. I mean, we could take a moment to go ahead and take a tester and test all of the fuses, make sure that none of them are blown. But I really think I want to start with a visual check before we start to let things get too complicated. All right, so taking you guys under the hood, let me show you where a few of the grounds are located. If you take a look right over here on this side of the fender, you'll notice that we have some grounds over here. There's a ground strap. Over here, there's 2 ground straps. And I believe we have a couple more somewhere over here, but we do have another one located right over here up against the firewall there. And what I noticed looking at these grounds is that they all look pretty corroded, or at least the little bolt does. I don't know if you guys can see that. These bolts are pretty rusted, so I'm not sure if that's exactly where our problem is, but I'll tell you what, I don't like the way these bolts for these grounds look. Let me show you what the one on the other side look like up close. Take a look at that bolt. It's pretty rusted, so I am kind of concerned whether or not we have some type of connection issue there. I haven't really located the grounds on the block. I'm gonna have to dig a little bit deeper to find those, but what I did notice that I didn't like is take a look at this mass airflow sensor, the connector and the harness. This is electrical tape that it's been wrapped in. So somebody's been in here poking around. And if you guys look over here at this connector at the computer, we also have some electrical tape. So somebody's been in here trying to do some checking or testing. I'm pretty sure they pierced some wires, so they went ahead and wrapped it in electrical tape. So anyways, we have some potential places to start here. I would really like to start by cleaning up these grounds, or maybe even checking the ground integrity to them. And then possibly taking this electrical tape off and taking a look at these wires, making sure that none of them were pierced or damaged in any way. That goes for the connector at the PCM and the one over here at the mass airflow sensor. And if I find any more along the way. But yeah, I would definitely like to start with these grounds. Okay guys, so a quick check that we can do just in order to save time. We're going to take this test light. I have it connected directly to the battery positive. So if you guys see, when I touch a ground, my test light lights. We're going to touch these grounds and verify whether or not they can carry a load and light this test light. Now, the important thing about this is we're not going to be touching the bolt. We're going to be touching the actual terminal on the cable. So if I zoom in a little bit here, you can see this is the bolt here. This is our terminal. So that's what we want to touch. Let's go ahead and touch it and verify that we have a good connection. I don't know if you guys can see, but that test light is lit nice and bright. Let me try to cover it with my hand here. There we go. You guys can see the test light is lit. Let's go ahead and check the other grounds over here. Again, I'm just going to touch the terminal part. You guys can see we have a nice bright light on our test light here. We're going to touch the top ones up here. Again, you can see we have a nice bright light. Touch the other one here. And again, you can see we have a nice bright light. So let's go ahead and check the other ground. Well, before we move to the other side, we could also check the block, make sure that the block is grounded. So let's touch the valve cover here and see if our test light lights. There you go. You can see that our test light is fully lit. Let's go ahead and move over here and test the ground on that side. Again, I'm just going to touch the terminal and you can see that our test light is fully lit. So we know that those grounds are good. The other thing that we could probably do while we're at it is check to see if we don't have a problem with excessive voltage at the engine block. So I've got my power probe here connected to the battery. You guys can see when I hit the button, we have battery power. But what I want to do is go ahead and start the engine up. Hopefully this thing stays running. Now we are going to take our power probe and we're just going to use it like a voltmeter and touch the engine block and see what it reads. Okay, hopefully you guys can see that, but on our meter here, we're showing 0.0 volts. So we do have a good ground on our engine block. We could also try to test the body, where we could touch maybe just a little spot over here and dig through a little bit of the paint and see if we have a good connection. You guys can see we do have a good ground and our engine just stalled again. So at this point, I don't immediately suspect a bad engine ground or a body ground. Quite possibly still we could have a problem where we have bad computer ground, but let's go ahead and check on wiring diagram and see where to go next. All right guys, so here we are looking at the wiring diagram for the powertrain control unit. Now in order to save time, because I am on a time crunch, I did go ahead and look over this wiring diagram, and I have determined that there really is no direct connection between any of these codes or any of the sensors involved in the codes that we're showing on the scan tool. So if you guys take a look over here, we have the heated oxygen sensor, bank 1 sensor 2. Over here we have the heated oxygen sensor for bank 2 sensor 2. And if you look at the heater circuit, the power feed that comes in is going to be this violet and brown wire. I went ahead and I highlighted it, but if you follow and look at what's shared along the circuit, you can see up here we have the evap canister purge valve. Down here it feeds the rest of this circuit over here, which includes the other heated oxygen sensor. Over here it includes the mass airflow sensor, which we don't have any codes for the mass airflow sensor. We also have this charge motion control valve, which I don't believe we have any codes for that either. So I really didn't find any direct link with that. We can follow the circuit off this way and you'll see that it actually comes from this fuse number 74, which is a 20 amp fuse right up here. That's located in the battery junction box at the left rear of the engine compartment. Now I did go ahead and check this fuse while I was at it, and I found that it was actually good. I even took the liberty of checking the rest of these fuses, and I found that they were all good. So I didn't find any immediate problem there. Again, really what I was trying to do was trying to see if there was any type of shared ground or shared power feed. Again, we had codes for the heated oxygen sensors. We had codes for the NOx sensors, which we can come over here and take a look at the NOx sensor. We have one of them. Again, these NOx sensors on this vehicle are actually a pretty simple setup. They're only 2 wires, and both of those wires go directly to the engine computer. So what that means is that this sensor, this NOx sensor, generates its own voltage. So really, there's no direct connection between any of the other sensors on the vehicle and these NOx sensors. They don't share any type of reference voltage because this thing generates its own voltage. Of course, that doesn't mean that there isn't a possibility that maybe this ground for this sensor in the computer could be shared with other sensors. That's a possibility. But when I take a look at the pedal position sensor and the throttle body, really there is no correlation between any of those power feeds or grounds that are shared with any of the other circuits. So here we have the accelerator pedal position sensor, and you can see we have several wires, but for the most part they all go back to the computer. So the computer provides a 5-volt reference, the computer also provides a ground, and the computer monitors these signal wires. So really, to me, I don't see any way that we could correlate a problem with the accelerator pedal position sensor to a problem with the NOx sensor or a problem with the heater circuit, because they're all kind of on their own individual circuits. So what I want to do is take your attention for a moment back over to the scan tool to take a look at these codes, because there was one in particular that really stuck out to me, which was this P0600. And if you read the code description that it showed on the scan tool, it mentioned something really interesting. It says that we have a communication problem between the PCM and the TCM, which is the powertrain control module and the transmission control module. But what I actually found out was that on this vehicle, there is no separate transmission control module. The TCM is actually built into the PCM, meaning that the powertrain control module actually controls not only the engine functions, but also the transmission functions. Now that's really interesting, because if you think about it, what this code is telling us is that this powertrain control module is having problems communicating with itself. That to me is definitely a big giveaway that we may actually have a problem inside of this computer. Now if we take a look at the code description that is shown here in all data for this P0600, I'm going to go ahead and open it up in a new tab so we can see it. It tells us here P0600 serial communication link. It gives us a description. It says here it indicates that an error has occurred in the powertrain control module. This DTC may be set alone or in combination with P2105. Now if you take a look at the scan tool, you'll see that we do have a code P2105 present. That's the code that refers to the engine shutdown. And if we take a look here at the possible causes, it tells us we could have a software incompatibility issue or a damaged PCM. Now that's really all this code is telling us. It's up to us to do the pinpoint testing to verify whether or not we have a problem internal to the PCM, or whether or not we have a problem with maybe a missing ground or missing power feed to the PCM. I mean, in my opinion, it seems logical that if the computer has trouble communicating with itself, you know, it's going to be setting a bunch of different random codes for a lot of other circuits that really are not related to each other, which I believe is what's happening in this case. And I feel like one of the first things I want to try to do is use a scan tool to clear the codes and see which codes come right back. Because one of these has to be a pretty hard fault code, meaning that whenever we clear the memory, it's going to be the first one to come back. So let's go ahead and move over to the scan tool and try it out. Okay, so this next step really in no way is scientific at all. But what I want to try to do real quick is actually go ahead and clear all of our DTCs. Now I did go ahead and record these just in case we need to go back and look at them. But what I want to do is go ahead and clear the DTCs and see which ones come back immediately so that we know what hard faults we're dealing with. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the clear DTC right here. Hit yes. It says clearing fault memory completed. Hit OK. It's communicating. We have a P01,000. So that P01,000 really just means that we just cleared the codes. Let's try to go back in and see if we have any other codes. No, we got nothing right now. So what I want to do is go ahead and cycle the key off, back on. I'm going to start the truck up. See if our check engine light comes on. Okay, so the idle came down. It's been running for a minute now. I still don't see a check engine light, but let's go ahead and see if we have any fault codes. We still do not have any fault codes. We got this P1000, but that doesn't really mean anything. I guess let me try to drive this thing around the block and see what happens. Okay, so I didn't even have to go on a drive. Our wrench light came on after just revving the engine a few times. You guys can see the wrench light is on, and at the moment, when I try to rev the engine, the throttle body, or excuse me, the accelerator pedal has no response. You guys can see I'm over here mashing the pedal, and the engine RPM is not changing. It's staying at idle. So let's go ahead and take a look at the scan tool, see if we have any trouble codes. And there we have it, this P0600. Let's see what else. P2104, P2111, P2104. So these are the hard fault codes that we have. So this is really what we need to focus on, this P0600 mainly, because these other codes, the 2104, the 2111 and the 2104 down here, all essentially just mean that the engine went into some type of default or limp home mode. But you know, it could all be because of this P0600 here. So the next thing we need to do is go over to the engine computer and check our main powers and grounds. All right guys, so after clearing the trouble codes with the scan tool and having the P0600 come right back, I feel like we're getting closer and closer to being able to consider this a bad computer. But of course, before we call a bad computer, we always want to check the main powers and grounds. Now on the wiring diagram, I've already got them highlighted. I want to show you guys in detail. So let's go ahead and start here at the top. Pin number 10, which is going to be a ground. You can see that this ground is located at the right rear of the engine compartment. So we're going to be checking pin number 10 for a ground. Then if we scroll down here, pins number 35 and 36, you can see they're designated V power A and B. They are both blue and brown wire. And if you take a look here, those two wires are actually spliced together. They share the same power feed. And if we follow this up, that power feed comes from fuse number 76, which is a 20 amp fuse located in the battery junction box under the hood. Now, I will say that previously I already checked this fuse and I know it's good. And I can tell you that we have power on both sides of the fuse. But what I'm interested in checking with this power feed here is not only whether or not we have a power feed getting to the computer, but what I want to know is while this engine is running and whenever it stalls, are we losing power here? Because it's possible that we could have a problem with this PCM power relay, which is actually what feeds the power to all of these fuses here. So like I said, not only are we going to check and verify that we have power here, but I also want to start up the engine, let it run, wait for the engine to stall by itself, and see whether or not we're losing power at either one of these pins. Now, if we scroll down here to pin 45, which is a green and red wire, you'll see it's designated as KA power. That is going to be our keep alive memory power. And if you follow this up, this is going to be coming from a separate fuse, which is fuse 36, this 10 amp fuse located in the same fuse box. But what's interesting about this one is that it is hot at all times, meaning that this is a direct connection to the battery. That means that even when the vehicle is off and the key is out of the ignition, this is always going to be a power feed to this engine computer. And finally, down here at the bottom, pins 47, 48, 49, and 50, these are all going to be a ground. And as you guys can see, these all share the same ground location, G103, which is located at the right rear of the engine compartment. So now that we know where our main powers and grounds are located and what pins we need to check, let's go ahead and move over to the computer, do a pin out on this PCM, make sure it has all the powers and grounds it needs to function. If it does, then we can comfortably call this a bad computer. And if we find that we are missing something, then of course we're going to go ahead and trace it back and try to figure out where we lost it. All right, guys, so this is where our engine computer is located right here, our PCM. And the connector C175B is going to be the middle connector right here. Now, I did go ahead and disconnect the other two while I was at it because I wanted to do a quick visual inspection. Again, you can tell somebody's been messing around here with this electrical tape. So I wanted to make sure that they didn't bend any of the pins inside of the PCM connector. But when I took a close look, all of these pins look like they're in pretty good shape. None of them are bent, and there isn't any excessive corrosion or anything like that. So we're going to go ahead, plug these back in, and continue with doing our main powers and ground check. And again, everything's going to be on this middle connector. So let me go ahead and reconnect the rest of these back onto the PCM. Okay, so now that we have these other two reconnected, before we connect this center one, we're going to go ahead and take off this plastic cover so that we can back probe this connector. Pretty simple to do. It's got a couple of clips around this little plastic piece. So let me take this trim off. Okay, guys, so I went ahead and I removed the back cover for this connector here. But before we plug this in, it is actually easier for us to just go ahead and check the grounds while we're at it. Checking these grounds does not require this to be plugged in. These four wires right here at the bottom, which is pins 47, 48, 49, and 50, which if you flip it around are going to be these black and yellow wires. Let me zoom in a little bit here. Okay, so we have these four ground wires that we're going to be checking. And so let me show you guys what setup I have. My test light here is connected directly to battery positive. So when I touch this back probe to a ground, this test light should light, indicating that the ground can carry the load. So we're going to start by back probing this pin right here. I'm going to stick it in there and make sure we have a good contact. And as you guys can see, our test light is lit. Well, hopefully you guys can see that. I know it's kind of difficult to see because it's bright outside, but the test light is fully lit. So let's go ahead and move over to the next terminal. There we go. And again, you guys can see that our test light is fully lit. So let's go ahead and check the next one. Once again, our test light is fully lit, if you guys can see that. Next up, let's check the last one. And once again, our test light is fully lit. So we have now verified that all 4 of our grounds here on pins 47, 48, 49, and 50 are all good. So the only other ground left to check is pin number 10, which, let me see if I can locate it. So at the top of the connector here, what we're looking for is pin number 10, which is going to be a black and violet wire. Starting over here on the left, this is pin number 1. So if we count over, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Right here, our black and violet wire. So I'm just going to kind of separate that right there. We're going to go ahead and take our back probe. And let's go ahead and slide it through the back of this wire here, or the back of this connector, making sure that we have a good contact. All right, and let me show you guys that the test light is lit. Again, I know it's difficult to see, but our test light is fully lit. So we do know we have a good ground on pin number 10. So at this point, we know that we don't have an issue with any of our grounds at the computer. Let's go ahead and check our main powers. Okay, so next up, we're gonna go ahead and check our 2 powers on pins 35 and 36, blue and brown wires. I've already gone ahead and located them. And as you can see, I went ahead and I back probed both of them. They're right next to each other because we're going to have to check this with this plugged in. We wanna make sure that the PCM power relay can operate. So we need to make sure that this connector is fully connected. And now I have my 2 leads. This green one right now is attached to the test light, and now my test light is directly attached to the battery ground, so that when we detect a power here, this test light is going to light. The other side, or on the other back probe, I just have it off to the side over here because we're going to check both of these powers separately. So I'm going to go ahead and start the vehicle up. Okay, so the engine is running. As you guys can see, we do have power on that pin, which I believe is pin 36. So let's go ahead, take this off, and let's check pin 35. We're gonna switch it over to this red lead that I have connected. You guys can see when I touch it, we have power. So we do have power reaching both pin 35 and 36. But once again, guys, one of the things that I wanna do is I want to make sure that while this engine is running, and in the event that it stalls, are we losing power to these circuits here? Because that's going to tell us whether or not we need to backtrace to find out whether or not we have a problem with the PCM power relay. So we're just gonna let this thing run and idle. I'm pretty sure it's going to stall by itself. If we just give it a few minutes, hopefully it stalls pretty soon because it looks like it is going to rain. Okay guys, so this thing is taking way too long to stall. It's already been probably about 5 minutes that it's been running. So what I'm gonna go ahead and do is I'm gonna go ahead and try to help it along the way. I'm gonna get inside the vehicle, hit the accelerator pedal a few times, see if we can't get this thing to go into fault mode and quite possibly stall. Okay guys, so the engine just stalled, but as you guys can see, we still have power on that circuit. Let me go ahead and take this off, and we still have power on that one. I'm going to take this one off and put just the green one on, and we have power on that circuit. So our engine stalled, and we still have power on pins 35 and 36. So that does tell us that our PCM power relay is working. We have one more power to check, and that is our keep alive memory power. All right guys, so our final power check, which is pin 45, is a green and red wire. You guys can see I'm already back probed on it. Right away, you can see that we do have power on that circuit. Again, this one is a power at all times, so we don't have to have this connector connected to check it. So at this point, we have verified that all our powers and grounds are good. We're pretty much almost ready to call this a bad PCM, but there is one more thing that I would like to check, and that is for pin fitment, because there is one possibility that we could have bad pin fitment at either one of these grounds or powers. So what I want to do real quick is I'm going to take this back probe here because it is a pretty good size for trying to do this test. Again, what we're going to do here is we are going to feel for drag inside of this terminal. So we're going to start by checking these main grounds here. Let me go ahead and zoom in a little bit so you guys can see that a little bit better. I'm going to take the tip of this back probe and I'm going to gently slide it in, and I'm going to feel for the amount of drag that I get from this terminal. And this one here pretty much kind of stops me from going in all the way. So I feel some drag here. Let me compare it to the next one over, and it feels pretty much the same. And then I'm going to compare the one over here. It feels about the same. And the one over here also feels about the same. So all of these feel about the same. I don't feel one that feels any more open than the other ones do. So next up, let's go ahead and take a look at our pin number 10, the second to last one over here, which is this one right here. Well, in this case, I really can't get a good feeling for it because of this red cover. So let me go ahead and see if I can pop that off real quick. There we go. Now we have clear access to our pins here. Again, this is going to be the second to last one. And really just doing a visual check, I can tell you that they look pretty much the same. I don't see that this one is spread out any more than the other one is. But yeah, this one feels nice and tight. It's not letting me go in all the way. And again, I'm not going to force it because I don't want to spread this terminal open. I just want to feel it and compare it to the one next to it. And then we can kind of just go down the line here and feel if any of them feel like they're spread open. But I mean, I can tell you right now, just visually looking at all of these, they all look pretty good. So we can go ahead and check our pins 35 and 36 right over here. And visually they look good. And by feeling it out, I can tell you right now, both of these terminals are in good shape. And then finally our pin 47, which is the second to last one over here. I can definitely tell you that this one feels good. Comparing it to the one next to it, they all feel good. So at this point, I don't see anything wrong with any of these terminals. They're all in good shape. So let me go ahead and put this cover back on, and we are done. All right, guys, so at this point, I feel pretty comfortable calling it a bad PCM. I already went ahead and I pulled the old one out so that we can match the numbers up. So the next time we come back, we're going to bring a new PCM. I'm gonna go ahead and program it, and hopefully that fixes our problem.
1 week later.
All right, guys, so fast forward, we are back. It has been approximately a week since we last saw the vehicle. I did have to order the computer online, which is why it took so long, but I do have the rebuilt unit here. Now it's already been pre-programmed, so all we have to do is plug it in and start the vehicle up, because this thing actually doesn't even have the PATS security system on there. So this should be plug and play. Anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and install this thing, drive it around, and see if it works. All right, guys, so we've got the reman unit installed. I've got the key in my hand. Let's go ahead, move inside, and see if this thing starts up. Like I said, it should start up. Well, the seat's kind of moved up real far. Like I said, it should start up because this key does not have the PAT security chip on it. So let's give it a shot here. Okay, that's not good. So I'm turning the key here. It is not cranking. And if you take a look, you can see our security light is flashing. Let me go ahead and grab the scan tool. Okay, so we're back with the scan tool. I'm gonna go ahead and go into the PCM. And here we have it, a P1260. This engine prohibited by PATS anti-theft system. So let me go ahead and go back and see if there's a selection to go into the PATS system. Let's see here. Yeah, there's nothing here pertaining to the PATS system. Okay, let's go into the instrument cluster. Special functions, PATS anti-theft system. This function will change the vehicle status. Hit OK. Okay, so it says here we can program a maximum of up to 8 keys, and it requires that we have a minimum of 2 keys. But if you guys recall, this vehicle did not have the PATS system to begin with, so I really don't think that that's going to apply to us. It does say here, requires parameter reset after installation of a new PCM. You know what, guys? I am reminded of this. These Ford computer modules, specifically the PCMs, whenever you replace them, you have to do a parameter reset. So let's go ahead and go in here and do that. This procedure will take 10 minutes. Let's continue. So what it's going to do is it's going to make us wait 10 minutes so that we can gain access to the PAT security system. Once we're in there, we can do our function.
11 minutes later.
Okay, guys, let me apologize. My camera battery died, It did not make it through the 10 minutes of wait time for the security access, but it was pretty straightforward. Once I got access to get in there, there's a function called parameter reset. You just click on that, let it do the function. But it's real important that once you finish that, you need to back out and go ahead and clear the keep alive memory, which is the KAM memory. And then once you're done with that, you should be able to start up the vehicle. I don't know how I forgot that. I've run into this before, specifically with these year model Ford vehicles. Whenever you replace the PCM or the engine computer, you have to do a parameter reset or the vehicle's not going to start. So I'm going to go ahead and stick the key and turn the key to the on position. And the first thing that you'll guys notice is that the security light there goes away. You see how the security light came on and then it went away? Yeah, now we should be able to start the vehicle up. Bam, we are back in business. So right off the bat, what you'll notice is that we don't have a check engine light. That is a good sign. So I'm gonna take this thing for a quick test drive, make sure everything's functioning like it should. And as long as we don't have any problems, this truck is good to go. All right, guys, so I just made it back. I took this thing for a pretty extensive test drive. I wanted to make sure that we didn't have any problems at all. And we are good to go. This truck drives great. There's no check engine light. We don't have any drivability concerns at the moment. So this is definitely a fix. I will say that, I was kind of nervous because anytime you're dealing with a bad PCM or engine computer and, you're not really sure if you might have missed something during the diagnosis, it kind of keeps you questioning whether or not you made the right decision calling it a bad computer. But in this case, we made the right decision. The vehicle is fixed. Everything's back up and running. Anyways, like I always say, thank you guys for watching the video. I hope you found it useful. I hope you found it informational, educational. If you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up. If you haven't done so already, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks.